this summer episode of Urban U, we take you back through some of the sunniest CUNY stories from our past season. We'll laugh with legendary comedian Jackie Mason, speak with a professor who's interviewed some of the biggest names in music, hang out with the tennis renaissance man, and follow the neighborhood coffee truck. That and more CUNY highlights. Welcome to Urban U.
There is still something that a song can do. That's what you go to in that moment. They don't talk about, here's the movie we watched when we got married. They talk about, this was the song that we wanted to play. There's still some elusive and, incredibly powerful thing that music can do that nothing else can do.
CUNY professor Alan Light should know. He's been senior writer at Rolling Stone and editor-in-chief at Vibe, Spin, and Tracks.
You've been able to interview most of the big acts in music. If it's okay, I want to mention a couple of these and just get your thoughts. The first one I want to start with is Bono and U2.
For the first shows that they played after September 11th, as it happened, they were starting a tour, early October. And that experience was unlike anything that I have ever been through or will ever be through again. To come into New York City and play Madison Square Garden, it was the first time that 20,000 people, were gathering for an event. And it was the first show where they dropped the screen and ran the names of all the victims for the end of the show, which they ended up doing at the Super Bowl. They had perfected what every second of that show needed to do. It was extraordinary.
The next one is somebody who's had a very big career, Taylor Swift.
So I love Taylor Swift, unapologetically and forever. And so I've done, stuff with her over the years. I did a big Billboard cover story with Taylor when the 1989 album came out. And I just think she's so exceptional because everything comes from her.
Are you ready for it?
I have never seen somebody so closely and precisely attuned to her audience, the way that she has grown and grown with them and led them places. That is 100% her.
Let's talk about Mick Jagger.
And I remember this quote from Mick. And he said, people always say that Keith is the passionate one and I'm the brains of the operation or whatever it is, that I'm more strategic. He's like, I am absolutely passionate too. I'm passionate about getting things right.
It's got to be a really interesting partnership.
You absolutely can see, okay, here's how the strengths and weaknesses work together. And also, I get why there are times where these guys cannot stand being around each other. Totally understand that.
The last one I want to ask you about is somebody who I know you really respect. You wrote a book about him and Purple Rain. Tell me about Prince.
This is what it sounds like when doves cry.
And I got a call from Prince's publicist saying, okay, so he's thinking that sometime he might do an interview. He hasn't done one for a long time. And we're thinking that, you could be the guy. And then there's a single that kind of takes off and I get a call, okay, he wants to do it. And I fly to Monte Carlo and spend 3 or 4 days and I go back and write the story. It's the first interview he's done in 5 years and it's great. He liked it. Everybody's happy. It was unlike anything else in the world. To be with somebody where music just poured out of them 24 hours a day. If it was 3 o'clock in the morning and he was in Dayton or he was in Hamburg or he was anywhere in the world, but he had an idea. There was a studio on standby. There was an engineer on standby. The band knew at any moment, okay, he needs you now, go. Nothing touched him that he didn't bring into his world. To be that level of genius, and that was actual genius, where everything exists to support your creativity. Your whole life is constructed around that. It's a different reality.
Why do you love writing about music so much?
I guess that I love doing it because it's still and always will be a mystery. There's always a crazy magic trick about writing a song that even songwriters can't really answer beyond a certain point. It's almost like it happened to somebody else, or it happened. People talk a lot about being lightning rods or having their antenna up and receiving songs that they just sort of deliver. And so trying to just get as close to understanding that as possible never gets boring, never gets old, never gets predictable.
"30-second space travel" was essentially the idea that we put in the subtitle: key ideas, inventions, and destinations that have inspired humanity toward the heavens.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
We wanted to give everyone a comprehensive sense of what it was like from the very beginnings of the science and technology of space travel to today and the future, when we actually are living in space as human beings.
And this book on the major scientific principles of space travel is a really fun read.
The idea is to take these things that might initially seem complicated, it's literally rocket science sometimes, and to make it into something that's enjoyable.
It's short snippets of information. You can read it cover to cover if that's what you want to, but you can really just spend a small amount of time with the book and expect to learn something about one of the topics.
And you couldn't ask for a more interesting group of 30-second tour guides to the history and future of space travel.
Karen and I are both astrophysics professors, and we study the universe itself and how we've gone to explore it. Alan's expertise is actually a really neat bookend to both of ours, where Alan knows both about the history and all the cool old tech of space travel and rockets and so forth, and also the frontier things, the solar sails, or all the latest kind of science fiction ideas that are being brought to reality by modern research. So this team is really an amalgam of a broad spectrum of knowledge and understanding of the whole concept of space travel.
So let's talk about some of the ideas in the book. It seems that humanity began accumulating the principles behind modern spaceflight a very long time ago. And the first chapter, appropriately, is about the first rockets. So just how long have we humans been sending rockets to the stars?
So the very first rockets that people launched were in the Song Dynasty in medieval China. And they were both for military purposes like missiles and for civilian purposes like fireworks. And so people have been dreaming about space travel for a long time, but it really became possible in the reality in the 50s and 60s.
Almost the last chapter in the book is all about the brand new non-chemical rockets we're developing now. In 30 seconds or less, can you guys tell me about ion engines and solar sails?
Ion engines basically take a very heavy molecule like xenon or something, accelerate it to very high speeds, and shoot it out the back of your rocket. It's very gentle acceleration, but in space, over time, you can build up a tremendous amount of speed and a tremendous amount of motion with very little weight.
And turns out, solar sails are more than just a cool sci-fi idea that looks good on Star Trek.
The cool thing is that even light has momentum. And so photons of light bouncing off a mirror impart just a tiny, tiny impulse on the spacecraft. It's so tiny, you would never even notice it on the Earth. But in space, in the vacuum of space, and over really long periods of time, it's enough that it can accelerate spacecraft.
So between puttering and speed of light, where are we in this?
You would very much start puttering, but then if you did it or if you could figure out a way to do it for years or decades, you could get very, very, very fast.
For practical as well as hopeful reasons, do you think space travel draws all Earthlings together?
Yes, absolutely. My few seconds worth on this is just think about Apollo-Soyuz. During the Cold War, what brought America and the Soviet Union together? It was a handshake in space.
The book is called 30-Second Space Travel, and it is so much fun. Fun book written by fun people. I'm sure you'll all enjoy it.
Still up on Urban U, a pastry chef who takes his culinary magic on the road. and the Prospect Park Tennis Center, now in the good hands of our own Medgar Evers teacher, Adrian Clark, also known as the Tennis Renaissance Man. Stay tuned.
I can sort of boast, I think, that I'm probably the only person who came up playing tennis at Prospect Park and made it to the US Open.
Adrian Clark has had a colorful journey as a tennis player long before he became the first Black director of the Prospect Park Tennis Center. He's been called a Renaissance man with 2 master's degrees from Brooklyn College. He's written short stories for literary journals. He's taught English at CUNY's Medgar Evers College. And he plays steel pan. But tennis has long been his first love since he was a young man growing up in Barbados.
Started at 12, I played my first tournament at 14, and I was frankly the worst player in the whole tournament, I think. I didn't win a single game from anybody I played. When I was 16, I was playing for Barbados. I was the number 2 junior, I think, in Barbados at 16. At 17, I was the number 1 junior in Barbados and top 4 in the entire English-speaking Caribbean. And it was because I loved the sport so much. I didn't like school, but I went to school so I could play tennis, because that's where the courts were.
His time on the court was put on hold, but only for a short time after his mother moved him and his siblings to America.
My mother told us, well, of course, we have to work. I actually worked on Wall Street when I was 17 years old, hated every minute of it, made sure I did badly enough to get fired, and went back to tennis because that's what I wanted to do. So I would play tournaments in Brooklyn and so on, and I played a tournament at the Port Washington Tennis Academy on Long Island. Played the owner's son, and I beat him fairly soundly, and he came into the net. We shook hands, and he said, "How would you like to train here?" For free. The Port Washington Tennis Academy was the premier tennis academy at the time throughout the country. So the number 1 player at Port Washington was John McEnroe. And we also had professionals coming through like Arthur Ashe, Chris Evert. They'd come through and play.
His tennis improved, and by then, tennis legend Althea Gibson had already broken down barriers in the sport, becoming the first African American to win a Grand Slam title. Thereafter, the United States Tennis Association ended a long stretch of bigotry, allowing other Black players to enter the US Open. Clark became one such player after he won nationals for the American Tennis Association, an organization established in 1916 to support Black tennis players that had been barred from playing in mainstream tournaments. Clark's win ushered him into the qualifying rounds of the US Open in 1983, the year that he says was his best in tennis, and yet his last.
Because tennis is still a sport where it takes a lot of money to be able to travel all over the world and stay in hotel rooms, of course, and play for months and months at a time. And it was frustrating after a while, so I just said, well, I'd achieved a big dream of mine, so I'll just stop.
Today, he enjoys spending time with his loved ones and he works largely behind the scenes to make sure the Prospect Park Tennis Center runs smoothly.
So those are the hard courts.
The center hosts tournaments, has a junior program, and offers private lessons, all under Clark's guidance. Though it's a new journey, his work still serves him a dose of his greatest passion.
Despite whatever else I do from time to time, like teaching school and so on, it's always been tennis that I come back to. It's first love and it's still there.
For Urban U, Abby Ashola.
Being in person makes it easier just to have everything at your fingertips. You could have clay at home, but you don't really have much else, plus the teacher's help.
I think one of the most beautiful parts about the ceramics department is the community and being able to connect with everybody and share our experience as artists together.
I think the students really miss it a lot, particularly that they are art students. They like to use their hand. Working in front of the screen or using Zoom is really painful for them.
Wow, it looks beautiful, Natalia.
Patisserie Florentine has now been open 8 years in Englewood, New Jersey.
Look at this. I want to show you that.
The restaurant is a place that fuses Tomer's passion for food and coffee. But when a customer wondered if there was a way to expand the coffee and pastries beyond the restaurant setting,
I was sitting with his laptop and a cappuccino, actually a cortado, and the almond croissant. And he asked me, like, can we bring this quality to people, not necessarily in a coffee shop, where it's more convenient? And I started talking to him, and that was 10 months ago, and now we are already with the first 4 wheels on the road.
and for this alumnus of City Tech, the Zing the Day coffee truck was born.
It aims to bring accessibility and convenience and quality for customers that are in the suburbs. We're not as privileged in New York City, for example, or any big city, to get a great cup of coffee.
But it's not just any coffee. When the pandemic shut down his restaurants, Tomer dove deep into coffee research.
And I just started calling different coffee vendors and roasters, and I tried probably about 30 different coffees. I just wanted to take coffee to the next level.
As well as running 3 restaurants and his new venture, Tomer teaches at Bergen Community College, where he helped create the first coffee accreditation course in the country, and where he dove into deeper studies of coffee culture.
We learn about farming a little bit, how we source it, how we roast it, how we introduce latte art, also brewing systems, basically everything that you see from the beautiful side of coffee. It's really interesting to teach people without much experience. So I came up with this silly name of positioning the steamer in the right way. Usually we say, oh, a little bit like this, a little bit like this. So I said, okay, we're gonna coin a new term. It's gonna be called kiss the milk. It's when the tip of the steamer just touches the surface of the milk.
And so, his love of coffee fed back into the restaurant, and now, a coffee truck. There are now 2 on the road in northern New Jersey, where he spreads the gospel of good coffee.
It's about, for me, continuing to be involved in the community, have the common ground of food and coffee involved in any single thing that I do in my life as far as a career, because that's my passion, whether it's in education, the restaurant industry, startup.
Tomer hopes one day to see the little orange trucks across the nation, but for now, look for them in New Jersey. For Urban U, I'm Craig Thompson.
My name is Nisan Ak. I'm studying orchestral conducting, master's degree in Queen's College, and I want to be a conductor. I'm from Turkey, Istanbul. I want to combine traditional and modern music in a certain way that both audience and the players and me as a conductor will love it. I want to conduct in Carnegie Hall. As a woman conductor, we have a really few role models because it's a male-dominant job, and both the conductors and the players, they don't know how to react, actually. Some of the people overcome it by starting acting masculine. I don't do that. I'm not masculine at all. I'm very modern and feminine, and I want to be a conductor. Maybe I'll be that role model for next generation.
As a matter of fact, I became a comedian. People don't know this because I was always very self-conscious. I always was. I am to this day. I was once so self-conscious that if I even went to a football game, if I saw the players get into a huddle, I used to think that they were talking about me.
In the classic tradition of old Jews telling jokes, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better archetype than Jackie Mason. With his recent passing just this year, at the age of 93, the comedy world lost one of the last titans of Borscht Belt humor. Nowadays, the Borscht Belt is probably most recognizable to many audiences as the setting for several episodes of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
My first everything happened in the Catskills. Everything.
But from the early parts of the 20th century, through its heyday in the late 50s and early 60s, hotels and resorts a few hours north of the city became the summer getaway destination for much of New York City's Jewish population, and as such, Jewish entertainers. Comedians particularly. And even if you've never heard of the Borscht Belt before, you've certainly heard of some of the icons who got their start there. Mel Brooks, Rodney Dangerfield, Joan Rivers, Woody Allen, Lenny Bruce, Sid Caesar, Don Rickles, Jerry Lewis. The list goes on. And Jackie Mason, born Yaakov Moshe HaKohen Maza, probably had the deepest Jewish roots of all of them. After graduating from City College in 1953, he became an ordained rabbi in a long line of family rabbis, stretching back to his father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and great-great-grandfather. But a funny thing happened while leading his congregation. He found that people would start coming just to hear him tell jokes during his sermons. He would soon leave the synagogue and began performing stand-up at Borscht Belt hotels and New York City nightclubs, honing his trademark style, fingers gesticulating, making often exasperated everyman observations, rapid-fire delivery, self-deprecating, and often deprecating to the audience, too. His first big break was on The Steve Allen Show in 1962, and he would go on to greater fame on The Ed Sullivan Show, never losing his thick Yiddish accent, refusing talent agency advice to take speech lessons. After a falling out with Ed Sullivan, Mason's star would wane until the 80s, when he burst back into prominence with a wildly successful one-man Broadway show, The World According to Me, winning a special Tony Award.
Thank you.
And for the last 3 decades, he would famously be a recurring guest on The Simpsons, winning an Emmy for voicing Krusty the Clown's rabbi father.
Excuse us, Rabbi Kristofsky?
So, what can I do for you, my young friend?
We came to talk to you about your son.
I have no son!
Oh, great. We came all this way and it's the wrong guy.
I didn't mean that literally.
As always, it's hard to separate art from artist, especially in the realm of comedy, where often the line between joke and vitriol is blurry. But suffice to say, his later years weren't without controversy, having called both former NYC Mayor David Dinkins and Barack Obama a Yiddish slur. And his opinionated commentary often took on a darker, hardline political tone over the last decade. For however his latter-day statements or political views do or don't color his career in retrospect, his place in history purely as a comedy legend is undeniable, having landed at number 63 on Comedy Central Presents The 100 Greatest Stand-Ups of All Time.
Thank God that I'm such a hit. I desperately appreciate it. To me, it's the most fantastic thing in the world, and I deserve every minute of it.
For the record, I'm Ari Goldberg. We leave you with the music of Brooklyn-based Dominican artist Yasser Tejeda, recently featured in a concert series presented by the Kupferberg Center for the Arts at Queens College. See you in our new season coming up this September, with more stories from the nation's largest urban university, the City University of New York.
Siente este ritmo que es de nuestra isla. Pa' los caribeños, fuente infinita. Busca tus raíces, que esa es la verdad de nuestra mezcla, la unión ancestral. Oh, oh, oh. Ah, oh, oh, ah. Piensa en el mensaje, siente mi latir, que la tierra grita, aprendamos a vivir. Siembra tus ideas.